right, well, let's get started. And so how do you get an unbeliever to read the Bible? You knock the legs out from underneath their God. And yes, unbelievers have a God. Their God is science. So anyway, to put it all into perspective, knocking their legs out from underneath them, I thought we could start this morning with a football analogy. So you're on the defense, and if you do not understand about football, then we'll be praying for you at the end. But anyway, you're on the defense, and the unbeliever is running right at you. Okay, so you picture that.
Richard Sherman is going to lower that boom on Albert Wilson. Perfect square up tackle, then driving him.
So knocking the legs out from underneath their God. So, all right, if you like cat videos, I have one of those.
Oh.
So we'll watch it in slow-mo. All right, that's kind of what I want to share with you this morning about doing that. I just want you to watch this short little video of Ken Ham and talking about this. So here's Ken.
You know, I used to be a science teacher in the public schools in Australia. And one of the first science lessons I taught, one of the students said, "Sir, you're a Christian." "That's right." "Well, you believe the Bible, but that can't be true. We know the Bible's not true." Why is that?" "Because of what our textbooks teach us about ape men and about evolution." What I found was, when I was a teacher, that there were students in my classes in the public school who thought that they couldn't believe the Bible and they weren't prepared to listen to the message about Jesus Christ because their textbooks told them that they evolved and therefore, in their mind, the Bible wasn't true. And one of the things that I started to do then was to help them understand that evolution has not been proven by science, and actually, when you understand observational science, it actually confirms the Bible's history.
All right, science confirms the Bible. I want to talk to you a little bit about 1 Peter 3:15, because we all know this verse very well. "Always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you." I believe we should go, you know what, I'm having trouble reading this. I'm going to see if I can, okay. Everyone who was in this seminar was on the right-hand side. I couldn't read the far right-hand side. Now I realized how to get rid of you. I believe we should go on fishing and not wait until the fish jump up on the shore in front of us. Okay. All right. This doesn't happen very often. So Jesus asked 307 questions. He has asked 183 questions, of which he only answers 3. Asking questions was central to Jesus' life and teachings. So did you know an average 4-year-old asks 437 questions a day? And if you've had kids, then you understand that. So what I'm saying is, don't wait until people ask you questions, and then we can approach them and start asking them questions. For example, I wore this hoodie 2 weeks ago and had several people come up to me and ask if I was a Christian. And so it opened the door, and in fact, Pastor John Worrell and I, we were able to share with one Catholic lady for about 20 minutes. And we asked her, do you read the Bible? And she said, "Oh, no, I can't do that." And we said, "Well, why not?" She said, "Oh, I can't understand it." And we said, "Have you ever tried?" And she said, "No." And we started saying, "Well, you should try reading the Bible. It's changed my life. It's changed this pastor's life." And she said, "Okay." She took out a envelope and she said, write this down. Where should I start?" And so over the next 15 minutes or so, we were writing down all these different things that we wanted her to read and how to get started. And for example, this Bible verse, John 3:16 and so forth. So you never know, people might come up to you, or we can approach people. We were sitting at a picnic table afterwards, after we left this train show, and different people would come up and sit with us, and we would be talking about God, and they would jump right in and they'd say, "Oh, you're talking about God," or "You're talking about church." And so it opened the door. It's like on the other side of awkwardness, we were already there talking about God, and they decided to jump in, and they wanted to tell about their lives. They wanted to tell about them going to church or not going to church. And so really just opened a lot of doors. It was pretty cool. So here is the transitional question. Do you know that the Bible contains scientific facts written thousands of years before men discovered them, meaning that the Bible is supernatural in origin? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about the next few minutes. All right. Atheists criticize us because we live by faith, but they also live by faith, a blind faith, faith in science. So science confirms the Bible. Some people would disagree with that, but I want to show you this morning how we can use that. So science confirms the Bible. The Bible was written 3,000 years ago for the Old Testament and 2,000 years ago for the New Testament. Science has been against what the Bible says, only to change after time, and now agrees with the Bible. So Isaac Newton said, "No sciences are better attested to than the science of the Bible. The more advanced science has become, the more the Bible's confirmed." So let's get started. You can use any of these as a transition to talking about God or the Bible. So basically there are three columns: the Bible, science then, and science now. And so for the next 20 slides or so, that's going to be the Bible, science then, and science now. Science then could be anywhere from 20 years ago to 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. So, so you have the three columns. All right, let's get started. The earth is a sphere in Isaiah. Science said, what, 400 years ago, the earth was flat. We know a lot of history of different scientists, famous scientists, that declared the earth was flat. In fact, some people still do today, but we can see with science has proven that it's really round. So what does science say today? The earth is a sphere. So the Bible says in Jeremiah, 3,000 years ago, incalculable number of stars. Jeremiah says, countless as the stars of the sky. Science then, in 150 AD, said there are only 1,100 stars. What does science say today? Agrees with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago. So let me pick on Dawn, since it was Pastor Dawn, since it was your birthday yesterday. If you can turn on your mic and
Audio.
What's that? So if you can just read this, and then that first sentence, and then I'll put up a next sentence and a next sentence. Just kind of this is the model.
The Bible, written 3,000 years ago, says we can't count the stars.
Okay, and go ahead.
Science said that there were only 1,100 stars. Now, science agrees with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago.
So that's the model, the Bible written 3,000 years ago, and then science said this, and now science agrees with the Bible. So what you do is you're just basically taking the legs out from underneath science and showing them that science is not always right. In fact, it's usually wrong, and they change anywhere from hundreds of years later, or even up to 1,000 years later. So, all right. So the Bible says in Job 3,000 years ago, the free float of earth and space. Science said up until 1650s that Earth sat on a large animal. And this is kind of what they envisioned. So quite humorous today, but back then that's what they believed. So now what does science say? They agree with the Bible written 3,000 years ago. So the Bible said 2,000 years ago, creation is made of invisible elements. Science was ignorant on the subject because there was no microscope. Science now, they agree that creation is made of invisible elements called atoms. All right, the Bible said 2,000 years ago in the Bible, each star is different. Science said all stars were the same because with the naked eye, they looked all the same. But now science says each star is different now that they have the telescope. The Bible said 3,000 years ago that light moves. Well, what do you think science said? Light was fixed in place. And now science agrees with the Bible written 3,000 years ago that light moves. You see, kind of what I'm doing is just very simple. Bible says air has weight 3,000 years ago. Science said air was weightless. Job 28:25, God created a weight for the wind. And I'm going to torture this, but Evangelista Torricelli he invented the barometer and discovered that air has weight in 1640. You can actually do this and fill up a balloon with air on one side and on the other side, not put any air in it, and you'll see that it's heavier. All right, now science agrees that air has weight. So knocking the legs out from underneath science and giving credibility to the Bible. The Bible says winds blow in cyclones 3,000 years ago. Science said that it did not. So 400 years ago, science said winds blow straight. Now science agrees with the Bible, blows in cyclones. We can see hurricanes and tornadoes and whirlwinds and so forth, how they circle. This is one of my favorite ones that I like to share, just because a lot of people are talking about going to the hospital and so forth. Bible said 3,000 years ago in Leviticus, the blood is the source of life and health. Well, what did science say just up to 150 years ago? Sick people must be bled. If you remember back that George Washington, our first president, died in 1799 after being bled to death. They withdrew about 80 ounces of his blood, about 40% of the blood volume of a typical adult within 12 hours. But science disagreed with the Bible. Now science agrees with the Bible. And if you are sick and you go to the hospital, they give you blood, or they give you a blood transfusion even. So now science agrees that blood is the source of life and health. You see how science has changed, but the Bible never has. So anybody else would like to volunteer to jump in and practice? Maybe Kenny, Pastor Kenny.
The second I put in food in my mouth, you're going to ask me something, Brad. Come on. So I just read it. The Bible was written 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It says that life is in the blood.
All right.
What does science say? 200 years ago, science said that sick people must be bled. Now science agrees with the Bible written 3,000 years ago.
All right.
So when you go to the hospital, you get blood. You don't get it taken away from you.
That's right. So
put it another way.
Yeah, you can put it another way. Do you know how this is the way I sometimes do it. Do you know how our first president, George Washington, died? And I put, he was very sick and his doctors bled him to death. And the words in yellow there, sometimes I add, sometimes I don't, but it's up to you. So then I just say 3,000 years ago, the Bible said that the life is in the blood. And now if you're sick and you go to the hospital, they give you blood. So that's kind of just the way, a lot of people know George Washington. They don't know how he died. Some do, some don't. But when you talk about being bled to death, and then the Bible said 3,000 years ago, the life is in the blood. And just, 125 years ago, they stopped that practice. But how science was wrong and the Bible was right all this time. All right. Now science agrees with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago. All right, going to the next one. Ocean floor contains deep valleys and mountains in Jonah 3,000 years ago. Science said the ocean floor was flat, just because they had not been down to the ocean floor. Now they agree that the ocean floor contains deep valleys and mountains, just like the Bible said 3,000 years ago. This is one of my another favorite of mine. Bible said 3,000 years ago, the ocean contains springs, freshwater springs underneath the floor of the ocean. Job 38:16 says, have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? So written 3,000 years ago, but science disagreed with the Bible until that they discovered springs under the ocean floor in the 1970s. 1970, I was 5 years old, and science disagreed with the Bible. 1971, science discovered the very first freshwater spring underneath the floor of the ocean. And since that point, 1971, now they agree with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago. So all of this goes to show that the Bible was divinely given to men to write. It was far beyond their own knowledge and wisdom. So now science agrees ocean contains springs. All right. The Bible said 3,000 years ago in Leviticus that hands should be washed under running water. This is another one that I use often with unbelievers. What did they say just 150 years ago? That it's okay to wash your hands in a bowl, but now you see surgeons preparing for an operation and they're washing their hands in running water. All right. Now science agrees with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago. And this is way before science discovered that there are germs. So God said, do this and you'll live. So historical or archaeological evidence. This is a fun one. King David was verified for the first time in 1993. Before this stone was discovered, scientists said King David was as real as the legend of King Arthur. Now science agrees with the Bible. Now there's proof. This is another interesting I guess, artifact. I saw this in Jerusalem a few years ago. The Pilate stone is a damaged block of carved limestone with an inscription mentioning Pontius Pilate. It was discovered at Caesarea Maritima in 1961. So some of you were even alive at that time. The artifact is significant because many doubted the existence of a historical figure named Pilate, as the only evidence was from the Bible. So very interesting. The Earth and the solar system. Where do we get the word universe? Uni means single. Verse means a spoken sentence. So you put those together and you have a single spoken sentence, or something like, let there be light. Isaiah 45 says, the Lord that created the heavens is the God that formed the earth, established it. He created it not in vain or without purpose. He formed it to be inhabited. Is 1% such a big deal? Is 1% such a big deal? In life, if you make a 99% on a test or an exam, man, you think I did a great job. You only missed 1%, but our Earth is so precisely placed that even a 1% variation closer to or farther away from the sun would make life impossible. Just a 1% variation would make life on Earth impossible. Let me talk about dirt. We all like dirt. This is really interesting. Genesis 2:7 says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being." For years, the scientific community ridiculed the apparent childlike simplicity of the Bible's claim that God created humankind from the dust of the ground. Well, they aren't dismissing it anymore. Scientists have discovered that the elements found within the human body are the same as those found in dirt and clay. In 1982, after an in-depth study, researchers at NASA's Ames Research Center confirmed that every single element found in the human body is also present in dirt. You're just a bunch of dirt, guys. We are just beginning to learn, the scientists acknowledge. The biblical scenario for the creation of life turns out to be not far off from the mark. Well, I say it's a bullseye, of course. So the moon, let's talk about the moon. The moon is 8,000 years max. Why? I've used this question with a lot of unbelievers. Why did the lunar landing module have these big wide saucers at the base of each leg? By the way, that they call it the pod, the landing pod. Looks like a upside down flying, what do you call it? Titulka in Russian, Frisbee. It's 3 feet or 36 inches in diameter. All right. The answer is because science believed that the moon is, or believes that the moon is 5 billion years old. NASA scientists expected up to 54 feet of cosmic dust had to be collected over that time. They attached these huge saucer pods to navigate the dust. However, astronauts only found 1/8 to 3 inches of cosmic dust. The small amount of dust means the moon can only be a maximum of about 8,000 years old. All right, I actually just last night I was watching videos of when they landed on the moon in July of 1969 and them kicking the dust, and it's just very minimal, and then driving the buggy through the dust and doing donuts and everything. Scientists said, as we all know, that we were geocentric. Everything rotated around the Earth. But then science changed, and they said, no, we discovered that we are rotating around the sun, heliocentric. You might remember that from science class. But then they said, no, our whole solar system is rotating around the Milky Way. So science now agrees with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago, that the sun has an orbit or circuit. Psalm 19, many of you know this very well, says it rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is hidden from its heat. You can see the little dot there with the circle around it. That is the sun right there, orbiting around the Milky Way. So now science agrees with the Bible, written 3,000 years ago. Isaac Newton said, atheism is so senseless. When I look at the solar system, I see the Earth at the right distance from the sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light. This does not happen by chance. The motions of the planets require a divine arm to impress them. Did you know the sun is shrinking? By the way, I use this transition a lot when people say it's hot or it's cold or something, talking about the weather. The sun is shrinking. Every hour, the sun shrinks by about 2 feet, but that is not much considering the sun is about 1,000,000 miles in diameter. If you believe the sun's age is only 6,000 years old, like the biblical record states, the sun will have shrunk only about 2.4%, and life on Earth would be quite fine. But what are the implications if our universe, according to scientists, is 5 billion years old? You have a problem. The sun existed only 250,000 years. So not the 5 billion, but 250,000 years ago, it would have been double its present diameter. At that size, with the Earth, with its present distance from the sun, it would be too hot on Earth for life to exist. Now, what if you say it's 30 million years old? Then the sun's surface would have been touching the Earth, causing a slight problem. All right, carbon dioxide. 0.03% is carbon dioxide in our air. If carbon dioxide rose 10%, we would all die. Just that small difference would make a huge difference. The Gulf Stream. This is one of my favorites. I love this one. By reading Psalm 8, it said, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, all that swim the paths of the sea. You can see, let me just go back one. You can see on the left-hand side is the regular ocean, and where the boat is, you can see the water is just very different. It's traveling 5,000 times faster than the Mississippi River. So that's the Gulf Stream. And so a guy named Matthew Morey, he read, actually his dad made him memorize all the 150 Psalms. And so he got to Psalm 8 and he said, God, I see the ocean, but I don't see a path in the ocean. But because you say, because your word says so, I'm going to look for a path. For the next 15 years or so, he looked for a path by studying the charts of those ships coming over from Europe. And he found some ships came a lot faster than others. And so he started to ask questions of why. And so he discovered the Gulf Stream by reading Psalm 8. So he was nicknamed the Pathfinder of the Seas. He is, to this day, the father of modern oceanography. And so in the 1840s, he discovered the Gulf Stream by reading Psalm 8. So pretty cool. You can look him up on Wikipedia, and you can see that he is nicknamed the Pathfinder of the Seas, and just all kinds of information about that he discovered this by reading Psalm 8:8, actually written in Wikipedia. So I actually went to Richmond, Virginia, and saw his monument there. And if you look right here, you can see that's his Bible right there. So Matthew Morey. All right, just think, the sun is just the right size for the distance from the earth. The earth's size is just right, and its rotation speed is 2. The moon is just the right size for reasonable tidal variation. The earth's tilt is just right for the present weather cycles. Earth's orbital speed is just right for reasonable seasons. The oceans have just the right temperature variation for sea life. Is it a coincidence? I think not. Oh, and I lost the last one. And chemistry balance is within reasonable limits for life. All right. Did you know, I mistyped, I made a typo there. So did you know this is in the Bible? Infectious disease, face mask, quarantine, social distancing. It's all in the Bible. Look at Leviticus 13:45. The person with such an infectious disease must wear torn clothes, let his hair be unkempt, cover the lower part of his face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. Infectious disease, we've most recently seen in COVID-19. Cover the lower part of his face, well, that's a mask. And crying out, unclean, unclean, that social distancing 3,000 years ago. So quite interesting. Quarantine, just the next verse in Leviticus 13:46. He will remain unclean as long as he has the infection. He is unclean. He must live alone in a place outside the camp. So that's quarantine from 3,000 years ago. A great topic, a great way to transition into a gospel presentation, talking about the Bible. Population, this is very interesting. Scientists insist humans have been populating the earth for 1 million years, not 4.5 billion or 5 billion, but 1 million years. All right. That would be 25,000 generations of people living only to the age of 40. Most of us are above 40. So anyway, even if everyone just lived to the age of 40, resulting in a population today of 10 with 2,100 zeros after it. Basically impossible. If you filled the entire universe with tiny electrons, it would be 10 with 130 zeros after it. And electrons are much smaller than we are. All right, the water cycle, Amos 9:6. He calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth. So next time someone talks about the rain or the weather, you can talk about 3,000 years ago, it talked about the weather cycle. Ecclesiastes 1:7 says, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, they will return again. Psalm 135, he causes the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He makes lightning for the rain. In Ecclesiastes 11, if the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. All right. Scientists didn't understand the hydraulic cycle until the 17th century. All right, the first law of thermodynamics, Genesis 2:1. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. So nothing new under the sun. Everything's been made and created. There is no creation ongoing today. It is completed exactly as the Bible states. There is no evolution going on. All right, the second law of thermodynamics. Psalm 102, in the beginning you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. And this is the part of the second law of thermodynamics. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment, like clothing. You will change them, and they will be discarded. So just because you can take a car and put it outside somewhere or anywhere, it is not going to evolve into a Lamborghini in 100 years or 200 years. It's going to wear out like a garment, just like the Bible talks about. All right, prophecies. This is really interesting. There are about 2,500 prophecies in the Bible. About 2,000 have already been fulfilled, 500 still to go in the future. And there are, about 40 prophecies about Jesus. But if you take 8 of those prophecies about Jesus that came true, statistically, it would be like filling the state of Texas with $1 coins 3 feet deep, painting one coin red, and giving one person one chance to find that one red coin. That is the likelihood of 8 prophecies coming true in one person, much less 40. So prophecy is very powerful. No other religious book has specific fulfilled prophecy. No other book, only the Bible. That it makes the Bible unique. Technology. Did you know you know more than these guys did? Luther, Spurgeon, Moody, and Wesley. Because Revelation 11:9 says that people from every nation will see God's two witnesses. This only became possible about 70 years ago when television could be telecast around the world. So we know more today than these guys here. It's just pretty incredible. They had no idea how that could come true, but we do today. All right, I'm going to have another seminar in January. It's going to be on Mount Sinai, the mountain of fire. And it's been a hobby of mine for a couple of years now. And it's really become more and more interesting in the last 2 years because January of 2020, Saudi Arabia gave the very first tourist visas. And so they were able to go in with quadcopters and take video. And so anyway, this is just like a 30-second advertisement for it. Me play this.
Think about how many things line up with the biblical story right here at this mountain. There's a beach and path where the Red Sea crossing could have happened, matching the biblical account. You can see how the Israelites could have camped near Elim with its 12 wells and 70 palms. Along the way to Jabal Machla, there's a split rock and area suitable for camping. There's a mountain referred to as the Mountain of Moses, with a large plain in front of it where millions of Israelites could have camped. You can see an altar of uncut stone at the foot of the mountain, where there's evidence of burnt sacrifices, right where it should be. There's evidence of bull worship, and you can see exactly how Moses would have seen the golden calf worship going on as he came down from the mountain. There's a brook that comes down from the mountain just like the Exodus story says. You can see right where the cave of Elijah might have been. All of these little details have to fit, and they fit.
So we're going to have by the way, I mean, just, it's really interesting and exciting. The beach that they believe where they crossed, on the Egyptian side, we can't go to the Saudi Arabian side, but on the Egyptian side, the beach where they believe they crossed, the sand along the Red Sea is all melted. How did God lead? With a pillar of fire by night. And so if a pillar of fire, I mean, we're talking, a lot of heat, we'd assume that it would melt the sand and the rocks together. In fact, they've taken the chisel and it's about 3 inches deep, the sand. It's all melted together. And anyway, just that little short 30-second ad is just touching the surface. It's really incredible. So I'm going to have another one in March, and that's going to be more of transitions to the gospel, not just what we did today, but different ones. So another hobby of mine. So to sum up, the Bible is truthful and trustworthy because it has not changed. Of course, we all know that. We need to study and prepare to not only give answers as to our faith, but to ask others questions and to make them think. And we can use these as transitions in sharing of your faith. So, all right.